people have in their mind, they'll say like, oh, I don't negotiate. Well, have you ever, okay, well then you negotiate. If the only time we engage, our only options are to, how do you learn to sit with the discomfort of your disagreement? If you can't stand the heat of the disagreement, then you can't, the more we can command of our feelings, the more we can, there's all this research on what's called, that's not sustainable.
In this week's episode of the Chris Senise Podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Bob Bordone, a renowned mediator, negotiation expert, and the author of Conflict Resilience, who's spent decades helping people, organizations, communities navigate conflict with clarity, courage, and compassion. Bob's a USA Today best-selling author, senior fellow at Harvard Law School, and the founder of both the Harvard Negotiation and Mediation Clinical Program and the Cambridge Negotiation Institute. In this episode, we explore how to approach conflicts not as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow, connect, and strengthen relationships. Whether you're navigating personal or professional conflict, this episode is packed with insights that will shift the way you handle tough conversations. Take a listen. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together. And Conflict Resilience, which I think I have not read. I started reading up on it, but I haven't gotten to the book yet. But I watch your videos.
Oh my gosh.
And I think they're fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
Because I watched the Virginia, Georgia one. I thought that was great.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That was a few years ago. Gosh, I barely remember what I did there.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why I like it. Because, you know, this podcast is about helping people live their best life.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, you know, I have my own practice. I am an accountant by trade, but I'm constantly negotiating. So I negotiate fees with my clients. I have a part of it's M&A. So I have those kinds of negotiations going on. And that's business. But I think you break it down in a way that is for every aspect of your life.
Oh, good. Well, that's how I see it. So that's good.
So share a little bit about how do you separate it? Do you not separate it? This is life, how we live it. Explain a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, when I just think of negotiation, right, a lot of times I think people have in their mind, they'll say like, oh, I don't negotiate, right? Like, and what they think about is, I don't know, Congress or like the UN or a labor management. And I'm like, oh, like, well, have you ever tried to persuade anyone to do anything? And they're like, well, of course. I'm like, okay, well, then you negotiate. Yeah. Right. So I really do think of negotiation as this very pervasive human activity. And therefore, knowing something about it and knowing also how you can improve is really valuable because it is that pervasive. Like we live and breathe it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you break it down into, I feel like we're always negotiating something. You know, you've got examples of, I saw your video about the 15-year-old or the 16-year-old negotiating, you know, a curfew at driving age. And I think it's great to point that out because we are always negotiating. You're also a mediator, correct?
Yeah, I also do mediation. I do a lot of work, and I think of negotiation broadly as two domains. Yeah, it's kind of like the deal making and then the dispute resolution. Okay. And I also mediate, which is really obviously helping people when they're in conflict. So
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You go ahead. No, you go. You go.
Why write this book?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. I mean, the book is both about negotiation, but also about conflict. And, I spent 21 years of my life teaching full-time at Harvard Law School. Mm-hmm. I ran the law school's negotiation and mediation clinic. And in my last few years of teaching, one of the things I started to notice was that I could teach students the skills in a simulation and they would do it. But when in their real life, they were highly avoidant. And even in the classroom, colleagues of mine would say, like, the students don't speak anymore. They don't want to get into it, right? And I think a lot of that, I mean, no surprise, right? We're in a highly polarized atmosphere, a real fear that if you said the wrong thing, it would end up on social media, you'd get canceled. So the safest thing to do was to not say anything. But the problem with that there's problems with that in all sorts of domains, but from the most basic human domain is that as human beings, we don't always all see eye to eye.
Right.
And any relationship worth its salt is one where we can actually disagree with each other and still have a relationship. Otherwise, it's inauthentic, right? I mean, if the only time we engage is when we agree. And when we disagree, our only options are to basically bring it to our pillow or our therapist or fight to completely destroy you. That's not sustainable. And so the idea for the book, it's called Conflict Resilience, because it is really not about conflict resolution, although it is, but it's really about how do you learn to sit with the discomfort of your disagreement and hold on to, like, own it, you're actually expressing your views, but you're also listening. So you're staying connected, but you're also being real. And that was the genesis. That's what conflict resilience is. And then I had the really good fortune of having a friend who was a neurologist and brain scientist at Mass General at the time. Now he's at NYU. And he was looking at like brain health of adolescents. And if you look, there's like higher levels of, social isolation, loneliness, depression. So even though everybody is like more connected than ever to, this cell phone here, right? And you would think, wow, we're more connected. You have the highest levels of social isolation and loneliness we've ever seen. And I think a lot of that is this just really inability to put ourselves forward in that discomfort of the conflict. And so, so the book really is, what does brain science have to tell us about this? How can we improve that ability to disagree better and also maintain relationships? And the reason why I say it's completely connected to conflict resolution and negotiation is that if you can't stand the heat of the disagreement, then you can't actually get to problem solving. You can't actually get to a negotiation. It's like, I know how to make a great French meal, but if I can't stand the heat of the kitchen, I'm never going to have a great French meal. So that's probably a longer answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one of the things I really like about how you present it. You tend to highlight emotion a lot.
Yeah.
And I think as I was growing up in my profession, which it's been over 25 years now, at least in my world, it was always like, keep emotions out.
Yeah.
But you highlight emotion very often when it comes to conflict resilience.
For sure, right? I always say I also many times, Chris, have heard what's important is stay rational. Don't let your feelings, don't let your feelings get together.
Yep.
And I always think whenever I hear that, that's somebody who's not super expert in conflict.
Yeah.
Because actually, so much of the time, and you learn this as a mediator, what's making this hard. Oh yeah, it's a hard problem. Maybe, I don't know. How do we divide grandma's silverware? It's a hard problem. But what makes it really hard? The emotions. What makes it really hard is the identity issues, the perceptions.
Right.
And if we could figure out how to talk about that in a productive way instead of pretending they're not there, it actually will help make the division of the grandma's china easier. Will it be easy? No, maybe not. Maybe, But so I think emotions are so much at the heart of all this. And I think we are wrongly taught to suppress them, or
Yeah.
in some families that certain emotions are good and social emotions are bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's gendered. Men can have these ones, but not these ones. Women can have this set, but not that set.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really do get into that a lot. And yeah, I'm glad you like that part. And I really hope that that piece of the work is resonant for
Yeah.
people and useful.
Yeah. And I think the topic or the tone behind your work also, which is something that I really like, is that you highlighted as just like these basic human needs that we have, and how that should not be something that gets stifled,
Yeah.
because there is always a level of emotion behind everything we're doing, and I'm glad that you highlight that it's erroneous to raise us that way,
Yeah.
as suppressing certain emotions. But I also feel that it couldn't be timelier.
Mm.
Right. I don't just feel that there's a lot of conflict. I feel there's a lot of like just combativeness, right?
Yeah.
It's not even like we're disagreeing. It's like we're hating each other.
Yeah.
And would you say that some of that potentially comes from suppressing those emotions?
For sure, right? I
Right.
mean, one of the really interesting things about our brains, right? I'm not the brain scientist part of our authorship duo, but I've learned a lot about this, right? Is
Yeah.
that our brains are really hardwired to protect us
Right.
at the least cost to the brain.
Right.
And thousands of years ago, the brain, the two biggest ways that the brain would do this is either to flee, right, to avoid,
Hmm.
or to fight.
Right.
Um, and I think what you see and I think we see both of these. I mean, in our media, we often see the fight piece a lot,
Hmm.
the anger, right? Or there's
Right.
the short fuse, and the way that people are. It's not that they're just disagreeing. I mean, I'm all for disagreement. I mean, this book is a book
Right.
about how to disagree better. But
Hmm.
that's the point. It's about how to disagree better, right?
Yeah.
And the way we see people disagreeing right now is um, really bad emotion management of emotions, things that are pent up. But
Yeah.
then the other thing, we don't see it as much, but we hear about it, is people who, I mean, the act of canceling someone is an act of avoidance. The act of blocking someone
Yeah.
on a social media is an act of fleeing. All of those things are fleeing. It's like, and um, what we're not doing is the really hard but also important work of how do we sit in a room and hash it out, even if we're not going to see eye to
Yeah.
eye.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I completely agree with you that the more we can get kind of command of our feelings, the more we can really be okay with feeling uncomfortable and sitting in the disagreement.
Yeah.
There are actually gifts to that, right? Because if I can
Mhm.
have a hard conversation with you, even if we don't
Mhm.
agree, I
Yeah.
understand your perspective more. I understand where it's coming from. And also, we did something that was a little vulnerable, frankly,
Sure.
a little challenging. And
Mhm.
even that can make us closer.
Right. Right. I've also heard you talk about almost that we can reach a point of no return, that we should be of that's the healthy avoidant thing to do, right? Like, I think you have a term for it, but it's this do not go there type situation.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the things we spend some time on, it's really interesting. Thanks for bringing this up, Chris, because,
Yeah.
as I started to kind of give talks about this, even before the book came out, as we were
Mhm.
writing, we got some really good questions, and we knew we had to address the distinction between when we say conflict resilience, right? We are encouraging people to become uncomfortable.
Right.
Um, but that's really different from
Yeah.
putting yourself in a situation, at the worst, right, of continuing abuse,
Mhm.
or subjecting yourself to trauma, or to
Right.
harm, or just to a conversation with somebody on the other end who really isn't interested in the conversation, right? They're not in there in good faith.
It's
And
a good one.
so we really spend time offering some diagnostic questions to help people think about, is this a situation where I do need to be brave? I do need to do something that's hard and uncomfortable.
Right.
Or is this really a situation to avoid, right? Is this a
Right.
situation? And so the last part of our book, right, is really helping you decide, how do you commit to either enter into some ongoing process with somebody or to walk
Mhm.
away,
Right.
and we use this negotiation term that we didn't coin. This was
Mhm.
not something new, but we draw
Mhm.
upon of
Yeah.
what's called the BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Okay.
And so the idea of that, I mean, just to make in a simple negotiation, right?
Mhm.
It may be the case that if you're thinking about buying a used car from me,
Right.
you have to think about, well, if I don't buy it from Bob, what am I going to do? Am I
Right.
going to walk to work? Am I going to get a bike? Am I going to
Mhm.
buy a Subaru from my Aunt Sheila?
Mhm.
Your identification of whatever the thing is, if we don't reach an agreement, is your best alternative to negotiated agreement or a BATNA. And
Mm.
you always want to make sure that you don't agree to something with somebody if you have a
Right.
BATNA that's better. And for
Right.
people who are people pleasers,
Yep.
they'll often do that. They're like, yes, yes, yes. And then they're like, and you say to them, well, why did you say yes to that? They're like, felt bad. I'm like, yeah, but this over here, you could have done it, would have been better. Yeah, but I felt bad. Okay,
Yeah.
that's bad, right? So it's knowing your BATNA is really
Right.
important.
Oh, that's great because there's a self-sabotage. There's a self-sabotage in saying no when you don't want to say no, right?
Yeah,
And yes when you don't want to say yes.
yeah,
And I want to say, I don't want to believe, but I want to say that happens so much that people, I've always said this, um, mean what you say,
yes.
or say what you mean.
Say what you mean and mean
However,
what you say. They both,
yeah,
right?
because you don't want to end up on the opposite side of what your true intentions are. Like, what did you really want?
Yeah,
And I've done that many times in my life where I was either too quiet or too vocal,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you also think there's value in being silent.
Yeah, there's times, and this is like when you could really use silence in a strategic way. And
Mhm.
also one of the things and this is where some of the really interesting brain science comes in.
Mhm.
The power of the silence, or the
Mhm.
power of a pause
Yeah.
has a lot of advantage. So first of all, it makes some space for the other person,
Yeah.
which is actually valuable. But
Yeah.
secondly, it gives your own brain some time for that emotional center to just recollect itself. So we
Yeah.
use this term in the book called limbic irritability. Um,
Okay.
and it's a fancy word. I loved it when I was collaborating with my co-author and I was reading one of the early drafts of something he wrote, and he talked about limbic irritability, and I was like, Joelle, um, is that a word you made up or is it a thing in your field? He's like, I just kind of made it up. I was like, well, it's good.
Yeah.
I was like, I like that, limbic irritability. But limbic irritability is really, right, what happens when your emotions are like the amygdala, which is the emotional part of your brain, has released a whole bunch of chemicals that
Right.
are overriding the limbic parts of your brain, which are the more cognitive parts. So your limbic part is irritable,
Mhm.
and the pause, the silence. There's all this really interesting research that's been done by this guy Matt Lieberman at UCLA that shows that just taking that pause reduces the amount of time of
Mhm.
that limbic irritability or that emotional refractory period.
Right.
In fact, one of the titles for the book, I mean, we were playing around with titles. We thought about having the title be Pause,
Mm.
Pause, right? Just
Right.
because that could be really, so silence can be really powerful, right? When
Right.
used well, right? I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes people go silent because they're in a freeze mode. They don't know what to say.
Mhm.
That's different.
Mhm. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I remember reading Just Listen. I don't know if you're familiar with it, by Mark Gottlieb, or I think that's his last name, if I'm
Uh-huh.
pronouncing it correctly. Just because of the intel you can gain
Yeah.
within your own, what's going on in your own head. Plus, you are able to listen when you're not talking.
Yeah.
I think people tend to have that tendency to fill silence. Like, people don't
Yes.
like silence; they don't like quiet. As I've gotten older, I like silence better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but they get anxious, and there's certainly certain people. I mean, a lot of
Mhm.
this, is also really interesting research around. Like for some people, and
Mhm.
silence was a sign of we're okay together, we're comfortable together. But for a lot of people, silence is something's wrong. It
Right.
makes them anxious, and they fill the space with talking.
Right.
And I think that the listening piece, certainly, I mean, listening is the stealth weapon of a great negotiator,
Yeah.
which is so counterintuitive at some level, because people think, well, if you're persuading, shouldn't you be talking? But actually, really good listeners are much better
Mhm.
at persuasion,
Mhm.
because they're getting to hear the story, they're getting to hear what's really important to the person they're going to influence.
Right.
So it allows them, whenever they do speak,
Right.
to actually speak with a more informed advocacy.
What led you down this path?
Yeah, I love that question. So I, after college, was one of these people who I'm sure none of your listeners are like this. Mindlessly went to law school, and I didn't really have a purpose. Uh,
Mhm.
I got into Harvard Law School. I was very excited. Off I went.
Yeah.
Was miserable my first year, absolutely miserable, and then took a negotiation class in my second year, and everything about it sung for me. So a number of things, right? One was that it's very interdisciplinary. It brings in, so our book, I mean, back then, because I'm old, but there was really nothing called,
We're
there
probably
wasn't
the
really,
same age.
I don't know. There wasn't anything really called neuroscience, or it wasn't a big thing. I mean,
True. True.
our book is like neuroscience meets,
Mhm.
negotiation conflict. But
Yeah.
there was behavioral economics, there was social and cognitive psychology,
Yeah.
there was game theory, and I liked the interdisciplinary focus. I was
Yeah.
also really drawn to the applied focus,
Okay.
that it wasn't just theory, and I really liked that the work had kind of a healing, redemptive power, for individual lives and for relationships. And
Yeah.
so all of that made me think, like, this is what I want to do. And then I was really fortunate. I always say, for most of us, right, our careers are some combination of, um, hopefully skill,
Yeah.
but then some like good fortune and being in the right place at the right time, and
Right.
making, and then being able to take those choices. And at the
Mhm.
time, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation was trying to get negotiation and conflict resolution as a field in law schools. And so they were funding young people, I was young then, to do research in, and I got one of these fellowships,
Yeah.
and so that really led me then to get to teach at Harvard Law School and start a clinic. And but it's funny because I was there for 21 years, and then I decided to go off and do my own practice. And
Yeah.
I still teach exec ed in Harvard, but mostly I really do my own practice. And people say, like, "Oh, did you always want to be a professor?" And I had no idea. Like, I was not one of those people who went to
Right.
law school that way. I was not one of those people who thought he was going to write a book that he'd find, in a Barnes
Yeah.
and Noble or an airport. But I
Right.
feel really lucky, as I just looking at your background, Chris, it also seems like you really like just found your thing over this period of years, and I hope that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the same thing. I mean, I remember when I waited to go to grad school because I just couldn't stand school, but
Mm,
I'm great applying
mm,
like concepts and theories, and I always think about that because I'm great at what I do and I like to research. Clearly I have a podcast. Like, where did that come from?
yeah, yeah, I love it.
But it's I always liked applying what I knew versus like going to school. And I remember dreading grad school and pushing it off until eventually I just had to do it. But I'm the same way. I like to apply
Yeah.
what I learn. And I don't even, it's kind of like what you're saying about things happening by accident. I went into this profession. I'm also a musician, so I'm using both sides of my brain, but I prefer having a portfolio of a life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not one thing that just drives my world. And I'm very passionate about the things I do, so nothing feels exhausting,
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense,
It
right?
does make sense. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that. I mean, I feel very similarly about where I landed,
yeah.
because I get to do some teaching. I get
Hmm.
to do some writing. I get to do
Yeah,
some mediating. I get to do some coaching.
right.
I get to do some podcasts, right?
Yeah,
But if I mostly did any of them, I might feel burnt out and exhausted. But
yeah.
I get to do bits and pieces,
Hmm.
that are all challenging in their own way and are different in their own way. And
Yeah,
then, I'm imagining again with you as a podcast, you get to talk to different people from all sorts of work and life.
yep,
And if you teach negotiation and conflict, it turns out every organization has negotiations and conflict. And so
sure.
you get to work across all sorts of sectors. I've
Hmm.
gotten to work in big universities and medical research places. I've gotten to
Yeah,
work in community churches. I've gotten to
right.
work in Singapore and Norway and with Israelis and Palestinians
Yeah,
and with people who sell mattresses.
yeah,
So it's like, oh, like you're in a factory somewhere in, South Carolina talking to people who sell mattresses one day, and the next day you could be with like in DC talking with people who are, our congressional legislators.
right.
And so it's really fun. The other career I had thought about for a long time was journalism for the
Right.
same reason. You get to just meet and interact with all sorts of different people. But I guess,
Yeah.
podcaster, I mean, depending on your podcast, but you could do that.
I mean, I first of all, my podcast, it really it doesn't have anything to do per se with my practice. However, when I spent half my life in audit, so I was constantly dealing with people. Every
Yeah.
2-3 weeks, you're changing, businesses that you're going to, and you're talking to leaders in those. You're talking to controllers, CFOs, CEOs when you're doing the audit work. And then when I transitioned into the CFO role at just one place, I found that dreadful.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
did not realize that I was actually a people person, and I felt very limited with just a few people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so this podcast, once I had my own practice that I had like a portfolio of services, it's a little different. Plus, it's like what you're saying, you drive your own ship.
Yeah.
You take on as many clients as you want.
Yeah.
You work on that as many hours as you want. And then I got my podcast that I'm talking about like psychology and alpha frequencies and all kinds of I've never envisioned myself here,
Yeah. I
but
love it.
this is where it's led me to. And I feel healthy
Yeah.
doing a bunch of things. Do you love doing your podcast videos?
Yeah, oh my gosh, they're really fun, and
So
it's
good, right?
it's changed a lot through the years. Like,
Yeah.
I started it kind of like towards the end of COVID, and I would,
Uh-huh.
first of all, I mean, there's a great story to this because I got a call. Gosh, I can't remember exactly when, but sometime it was during COVID from one of my former students who had graduated in 2016,
Yeah.
and he was mostly talking about how depressed he was about the state of the country,
Yeah.
and he had taken a class that I taught on polarization.
Yeah.
Anyway, towards the end of the call, he's like, "Did you ever think about doing a podcast?" Not a podcast, sorry, a YouTube channel. Oh my gosh, I'm talking
Yeah.
about what you do, a YouTube channel. And I was like, "Yeah, no, definitely not. I've never thought about such a thing, and I have no interest."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be fun." I was like, "Well, that's very nice of you, but I'm not interested."
Right.
And so it turns out he ran a company that produces these things.
Right.
Anyway, over a period of about a month, he persuaded me
Yeah.
to try it out.
Okay.
But he was in Utah and I'm in the Boston area.
Right.
So at the beginning, I would fly out there every few months and do a whole bunch of podcasts.
Yeah.
Sorry, why do I keep saying podcasts? A whole bunch of YouTube videos.
You're on a podcast.
Everyone, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel too.
Yes. We'll make sure we put it in there.
Okay, great. Anyway, and then at some point, he would like have a team come out here.
Okay.
And now what we've done is every week, I'll just do it, from my house. And I'll do like a negotiation in the news. I'll just react to, in fact, earlier today, I recorded something on the whole congressional, the whole Epstein stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Yikes. Yeah. But so it's been really fun also to see the way in which it's evolved and the kind of feedback you get. And I don't know if you experience this, but I know that for me, there are times when I think, well, there's something about working with a small set of students over a course of a semester that's really special. And there really is.
Yeah.
There's also something about having something out there that just touches for lots of people. And, and it's like, if you're watching a 10-minute video, are you getting my 100-hour course or even the 2-day programs that I teach?
Yeah.
No. But in terms of the impact, like there's a lot more people who can watch a video than who's going to come to a 2-day course.
Right.
So anyway, it's been really fun.
Yeah. I like how you are tying current events into your videos. Like I watched the one on the government shutdown. Talk about negotiation. But, I think I like how you're tying those things in. Even things on pop culture, like the Ginny and George's video. And for me, I know my podcast can run a little long. It'll be maybe like an hour. I initially thought it'd be like 40 minutes, but I kind of let the guests, I leave myself open for 3 hours just in case. And I did have someone take 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
But, well, it became 2 episodes actually because it totally changed topics.
Yeah.
But for my attention span, your 10, 12-minute videos are great.
Yeah. No, it's hard to keep. They always say, so apparently the algorithm for YouTube says you just want to keep half of your listeners for 30 seconds.
Yes. So your story is quite interesting. And it's what I like is how we shift in time, right? It's like we can pick these professions, like you chose law, I chose accounting and finance, and then we end up in like this other, you've kind of stayed where you're at, but I'm sure, that YouTube videos were not on your mind 20, 25, 30 years ago, right?
Definitely not on my bingo card. No. A lot of what I do is not, and it's weird. Same. Like there's ways in which, I definitely still think of myself as someone with a law degree, right? I don't think of myself as like, certainly I have a YouTube channel, right? But I wouldn't say like, what do they call me? A creator? No.
Right.
I think what's been interesting for me in the months since, and maybe this is deciding my age, it's hard for me to imagine myself as a creator, but in the months since this book came out, so I had written 2 academic books before, but this is the first kind of HarperCollins out there in the world book.
Yes.
And a number of times I've been introduced as an author. And it's funny because I don't think of myself as an author. I think of myself as like, I'm a law professor, or I'm like a negotiation consultant, or I'm a mediator.
Right.
So there's a way in which I still am like the same. I guess I'm like a lawyer who like teaches negotiation in law schools. Right. And does law-ish stuff. On the other hand, I haven't practiced law since 1998. And wow. You can make the argument more that I am kind of an author who does executive training, coaching, and public speaking.
Right.
But my own self-concept is still like, hasn't shifted that much, you know?
But you still work in mediation,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, I mean, there's so many branches. There's so many directions an attorney can go in.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people assume like all attorneys are the same.
Yeah.
When in fact they have different disciplines that they focus on, right?
That's right.
It's the same thing with accountants,
Yeah.
And right, like we don't all do the same things. But
Chris,
I
is
mean,
who is your audience? I mean, hello audience, but like I assume it's not primarily accountants.
no, actually it's not. So, I just started this podcast in July.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Wow,
We're well slated through the end of February with guests. So that's very
Great.
exciting. But having a YouTube channel yourself, that it takes some time for that data to populate.
Yeah.
And I've been eager for more data to populate, but so far, surprisingly, I am being watched by 25 to 40-year-olds.
I love it. That's great.
And I am older than that by a lot.
No.
So, I think it's interesting. And it's funny because on social media, it's more women. And on YouTube, it's more men.
Interesting. Is that because in general, there are more men on YouTube, or do we even know if that's true? I feel like that might be true, though. I don't know.
That's a good thing to dig into because I'm just waiting for all that data to populate where it makes sense, right? Because I'm a data-driven person. But
so you're an accountant.
I want to get like my sticky hands on that. But it's just that the topics are just like really ranged from a Bob Bordone to a Peter Panagore who's a near-death experiencer.
Oh wow!
And earlier today, I had a guest on the Akashic Records.
Oh wow!
So the goal is to live your best life and be the best version of yourself. And I think that the people that I try to have on, no matter what their walk of life has been, they serve that purpose.
Yeah.
Knowing how to negotiate in life is an important tool, right? Like it's good to have that. You're always negotiating.
Yeah. And people just think you wing it, and you can wing it, but like anything worth doing is worth doing well. And like, do you wing most of your professional life? No. Like, do you wing like who you marry? No. Like, why would you not want to be the best you could be?
Right.
As a negotiator, especially when you realize you're doing it all the time.
Yeah, I think that's people don't look at it that way, Bob. I think they just think that I negotiate a house, I negotiate a car, but you're always negotiating with someone.
For sure. It's like Friday night plans, your spouse wants to go out and you want to cook at home. That's a negotiation.
On that note, Bob, tell us the story of Saturday nights as a kid, negotiating dinner.
Probably was telling that story around, like an escalation where you escalate, and then what you end up doing is, in order to punish them, you end up with some kind of even worse situation. Yeah, and I believe that story was definitely a standoff with my parents.
Yeah,
and I actually. I didn't think they'd actually leave me, but they did.
It's funny. I have those tendencies in my home life where I'm like, forget it. Neither one. I don't want to do anything. Yeah. When in fact I still do. But it's funny how I can just turn the switch off in business.
Interesting. Yeah. Well,
I can be the listener. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? There's a lot of really interesting research about how people do show up different in professional versus personal, both in the way they handle conflict and the way they handle negotiations. But they also, I think it's not just professional, personal. It's also they can show up differently depending on what the relationship is,
Yeah.
what's being negotiated.
Yeah.
And a really big line of research is when the difference between when they negotiate on behalf of themselves or on behalf of somebody else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that shows up even more powerfully like in gender research.
Oh.
So for example, if you look at like outcomes for men and women, a lot of outcomes still show that men will do much better than women.
Okay.
But if you look at outcomes where men and women are negotiating on behalf of somebody, let's just say as a lawyer,
right.
there's no differences in outcomes.
Mm.
So what's going on? Now, it's very hard to unpack what's going on, but
Right.
There's probably a number of things going on. One, though, is just a culture traditionally where women are not taught to ask for things
Okay.
for themselves.
Right.
So they don't. They're fine asking for someone else, but not for themselves.
Yeah.
But then another possible dynamic, there's all this research on what's called the gender backlash. So if a woman asks for something, they get punished where like they're seen as being, you could think of not nice words, but bossy,
bitchy.
yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if a man asks for it, he kind of gets it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be punished, anyway, I don't know how we got into this. Oh, just to say the way people show up, you mentioned personal versus professional, but there's also this gender difference. There's also contextually different. There's if you're representing someone. And again, like this is where learning about negotiation is really helpful because the more self-aware you are about what made you in this case ask, in this case not ask, or what made you blow up here and be productive over there.
Right.
That self-awareness really increases your ability to be efficacious and effective in a negotiation. I mean, the first few chapters of our book really focus on helping people to become more self-aware of how they show up in conflict, what's going on internally for them. Because the better command they can get of that, the better they're going to be able to actually negotiate.
Yeah. Here's a question on the book.
Yeah.
Now, it's co-written.
Yeah.
With a neuroscientist?
Yes.
Why that direction?
Well, it's a great question. I'd like to have some like super deep answer, but there isn't a super deep answer. It is, I was doing some work on this idea of conflict resilience. I think the first time I gave a talk about it was 2018. I wrote a law review article on it.
Yeah.
And then I had done some work at Massachusetts General Hospital here in Boston.
Yeah.
And it goes by MGH. And in the course of that work, met my co-author. We became friends. Yeah. And at some point, and his research touched on things like social isolation, loneliness, etc.
Right.
And, we would talk about stuff I was doing, he was doing. And then he finally said, do you think there's like a productive mashup here for a book? And I thought, first I was like, I don't know. You don't know anything about my field. But then as I thought about it more, I thought, actually, I think there would be like this emerging research in brain science could be applied in a very readable way. And so that's what made us do it. I mean, we were just like, let's see if we could pull this off. Let's write a book proposal. And it worked.
That is fantastic because I don't know that I have heard about this specific combination of concepts together, although neuroscience is definitely becoming like a hot topic. Good for you leveraging that.
Well, we were really, I mean, it's funny. Yeah. I mean, what was great about it is like we did get, you never know once you write a book proposal, if anyone's going to bite.
Right.
And we got a lot of bites. And I think it was because it was, and it still is, I think, a unique mashup. As far as we know, we are the only book, like pop book, or I think even any book out there that covers negotiation, conflict, and brain science. And that's a combination of law professor with a neurologist brain scientist. So
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great. I had a guest, Dr. Leanne Davey. She's an organizational psychologist.
uh-huh.
She wrote The Good Fight
Uh-huh. Oh wow.
many years ago. And I read that probably just a couple years into my profession. I think it's been around a while, and it's about conflict resolution.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic. I feel like it's pretty timeless, because it's about showing up for conflict and
Yeah.
just But I love how you've blended in neuroscience into
Uh,
that, because it's how do I put it? It's I like how you call it a mashup. In music, we have mashups all the time.
yeah.
But just being able to blend those things together and have an outcome for it, right? That you guys took a shot at it and it made sense is pretty fantastic.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I feel really lucky that it worked. I mean, we didn't know if
Yeah.
it was going to work, and
Yeah.
but then we I think what was fortunate is that we have
Yeah.
pretty similar writing styles.
Oh,
So
really?
that made it easy. And I just had again, he wasn't really working in the negotiation conflict space, but he could bring in the brain science.
Yeah.
And I just have a treasure trove of stories. So that
Right.
was a good combination. And so, yeah, it's been like a really, a fun journey. And then I think, as you were saying earlier, I mean, we were aware of, obviously, when we wrote this proposal, of the growing polarization in our country.
Yes.
So we had a sense that it would almost certainly be timely. I mean, I don't know if we knew it was going to be this timely. I don't know if and this is not necessarily a good thing, right? That
Yeah.
things would be so heated and so
Yeah.
stressed in our country. But we also didn't think that in between when we started and when the book came out, polarization would disappear or conflict.
Right.
And the book really isn't about polarization. It's about conflict writ large. But I
Yeah.
think it speaks to the moment
Right.
insofar as people just having this reduced ability to sit with disagreement and stay connected.
Yeah.
And so a book that helps people to disagree better and
Yeah.
maintain relationship and hold their own integrity, I think
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
resonant right now.
Y-
So
Absolutely. I there is I just feel like things are combative. That's the word that keeps coming to mind. And there is this sense of, I call it keyboard courage. I don't think I
mm,
coined it. I must have heard that
I love it.
somewhere
It's good.
else. Of It's kind of like liquid courage,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
keyboard courage, where you can say just about anything from a keyboard.
yeah,
You can be hurtful, harmful,
yeah,
and just dirty,
yeah.
and does the book speak to that part, that
Oh,
aspect of, because that causes a lot of polarization when you're not face to face with somebody. It's
a
so much
hundred
easier that
percent.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, one of the things we really talk about
Yeah.
is the value of in person because it's
Mhm.
not conflict resilient. Writing up some nasty post or
Yeah.
a cruel email, that's not actually disagreeing well.
Mhm.
That's disagreeing poorly. And
Right.
that's not being conflict resilient, right? It's
Yeah.
immature. It doesn't build relationships, it
Right.
destroys them.
Yep.
It's not coming from a curious place.
Mhm.
And from a negotiation perspective, you're not being persuasive.
Right.
But here's where the brain science comes in, right?
Yeah.
If we're on whatever X or Twitter or your
Sure.
social media of choice, Facebook,
Yes. Yes.
whatever, um, and you say something nasty to me,
Mhm.
I respond, I block you, so I never have to hear you again. But
Mhm.
then you know what I'm going to get also? A bunch of loves and likes from all my people who agree with me, and a bunch of comments from other people who agree with me.
Sure.
From a brain science perspective, that's shooting off all these positive endorphins. I've gotten rid of you. you're not even a person. You're just a tool. All
Right.
my little heart emojis and my
Yeah.
people
Mm-hmm.
release all of these great like
It's
things in my
dopamine. Yeah.
brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But are we any better connected? Have we managed our conflict? Have I learned anything? Is it going to help us ever bridge our disagreement on fill in the blank? Guns, environment, abortion,
Sure.
immigration, or
Yeah.
from a family perspective, where we're going for Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
uh, who's cooking what,
Right.
where the family's having its vacation. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't advance any of them. But what it does do is give your brain a big chemical hit,
Yeah.
and you feel great about yourself. And
There you
that's what we
go.
have to combat, right? That's like the work of the book, to
Mm-hmm.
be like, hey, people, like, this is what's happening in our brain, and you can retrain it because our brains are like any muscle. They're
Yes.
neuroplastic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I do want to ask one quick thing.
Yeah, great.
So the term is resilience.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've been talking about handling conflict,
Yeah.
but on the receiving end,
Yeah.
we want to be resilient, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that's what the title is about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is in the receiving end. It is the ability for us, it's that ability to be kind of strong and stay with
Yeah.
that discomfort that we feel
Yeah.
when the conflict happens. And
Right.
so, which the thing reason why I'm not saying 100% yes is
Yeah.
it's not always on the receiving end, right? So, for
Okay.
example, it could be on the receiving end if someone's being nasty or difficult or conflictual with you.
Right.
It could be they're being entirely nice to you, but they're saying something wacky that you disagree with.
Okay.
So you're the one who has to actually create the disagreement. So what's an example? I'll just take something that probably most of your listeners do not agree with, but which is this. If someone says to you, Chris, what I want to talk about on this podcast is why the earth is flat.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone who's a reasonable person knows that the earth is flat.
Right.
And that's what I want to talk about today. And I think it'd be a lovely place. I'm not creating any conflict. I'm being very sweet with you.
Right.
You have to be the one to say, Bob,
I disagree.
I disagree. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted because I actually think, like, at least since the 15th century, we've really seen it as round. Yeah. So being conflict resilient is both handling it well when it's coming at you, but it's also having the courage in those important moments to state your own disagreement, even if they're being sweet, right? Does that make sense?
Bob, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm glad you clarified that because initially the way that I was interpreting it was that we need to be resilient with conflict as the receiver.
Yeah.
But you're right, because we did talk about silence and we did talk about speaking up. And that's part of conflict as well, because you may be the starter of the conflict, but
100%.
and I really didn't think of that. And I'm glad you clarified that so that anyone who picks up the book without reading it first, obviously you have to pick it up and then read it, but has an idea of, some of the concepts that you'll be mentioning in the book.
Yeah.
So,
no, I really want like people to know this is, in fact, one of my colleagues who teaches at UC Irvine sent the book to one of her friends who was entering into a negotiation. And she CC'd me in the email. Yeah. And she said, this is a book about speaking up.
Oh.
And I never even thought about the book that way, but it is a book about speaking up. So I think what I want listeners to know is if you are somebody who the way you handle conflict is just to say, oh, yes, Uncle Wally, the earth is flat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, this is, black as white, just to agree
Yeah.
with them. This is a book for you because it means you need to find some way in your relationships to be more authentic and mark your disagreement. You do no
Right.
one a service that relationship by just nodding and saying, "Of course, the Earth is flat." La 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 la.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like you're just a fake though. You don't think it's flat, right? So
Right.
it's how do I mark my disagreement when I have it? When the
Right.
other side is coming at me, as you say, how do I sit with it in a
Yeah.
productive way? It's both of those things.
Yeah. And I
Uh,
mean on the person, I don't want to say conflict starter because that it is
yeah,
if you disagree, right? I
yeah,
would like a different term for that. But on that end, when I think about neuroscience, to stifle yourself in those situations, you're going to think about it, right? We're talking about the world being flat, and that's a conversation, but things that can be far more severe or more important with more at stake,
yeah.
if you're not saying things when it's important to say them, in your psyche, what does that do?
Huge costs.
You start holding on to resentment, you start masking yourself and what you really agree with or believe or what have you. So, from a neuroscience perspective, I could see that being a huge internal conflict.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
So,
Yeah,
wow, I love your mashup.
good. I love it.
I love your mashup.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together.